All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the Restrict Act. Now, this is billed as the attempt to ban TikTok, or, like the oversight over TikTok, basically, by the U.S. government. And I and others warned that the attack on TikTok would automatically be dovetailed with greater authoritarianism in general, because that's the way the government works. I took one look at the concept and I said, does the U.S. government actually care about the well-being of kids, number one? And number two, definitely, does it give a shit about communist propaganda? And I said no. Certain members of Congress effectively are communists. They're latching on board with this shit too, so they clearly don't care about it. And none of them really support free speech. There are some exceptions. Rand Paul supports it. Massey and a few others. There aren't many members of Congress that really understand the civic underpinnings of the United States, because unfortunately a lot of them were born into a school system in which we had already watered down the civics curriculum, and some of them come from an era, basically civics no longer existed by the 1990s. It was replaced entirely with history courses. Let's learn about ancient cultures instead of understanding our own. That'll be pragmatic. And kids will have so much fun learning about things from 5,000 years ago. I was the one nerd that did, but anyway, the Restrict Act goes far further. And the writing was on the wall. The second they started talking about banning TikTok for the sake of the children, think of the children, always important to do otherwise when they say that. Same with guns, by the way. As soon as they trot out that tired old line, you know that it's going to be a stinker. And so the Restrict Act is basically nothing more than the Internet Patriot Act. I'll read through a little bit of this. Link in the description. It's a thread by the Mises Caucus, so I'm going to read some of this verbatim as opposed to bothering to archive it. Although, anytime that you complain about the government, you might be banned, and according to the Restrict Act, that would be a lot easier if it passes. The Restrict Act is not limited to just TikTok. It gives the government authority over all forms of communication, domestic or abroad, and grants powers to enforce any mitigation measure to address any risk to national security now and in any potential future transaction. Now, that's fine. We want to address national security risks. The problem, again, is always the broad language and the inevitable overreach of such a bill. And we'll get into that now. So, what happens if you are designated a national security threat? So, the ADL has said that you are wrong. Some random FBI agent has marked you as potentially influenced by the Russians or something. What can they access of yours to confirm it? Everything. Notice the preemptive attack on quantum encryption in there too. Yeah, so they want to go after encryption. It also allows the Director of National Intelligence and Secretary of Commerce the authority to universally designate, I think they mean unilaterally designate, new foreign adversaries without notifying Congress, and a 15-day window to notify the President. Who's the President at the moment? Yeah, let's give him more power too. It also requires a joint resolution of Congress to overturn. So basically, if the Secretary of Commerce doesn't like you, and that is a politicized position in any administration, they don't even have to tell Congress, but somehow Congress does have to overturn it, and it has to be a joint resolution. So we're talking about a bipartisan effort here. That's really easy to get, by the way. Congress will really take that job seriously and not outsource it again to some group of bureaucrats. If this passes, what will happen is you'll end up with a major scandal where the government has improperly labeled people national security threats, and then Congress will do what they did with the NSA spying years ago, and they'll simply outsource it. You remember that? Well, we won't store the data ourselves. We'll have the corporations store it, and then we'll get it from them. They'll do the same thing. They'll have a company under contract doing it for them once they get caught out inevitably abusing the system. If you recall from before, foreign individuals can now also be U.S. citizens that are deemed a national security threat. Once designated, the bill grants authority to enforce any action deemed necessary to mitigate the threat with no due process and few limits on punishment. So it's kind of like the FISA Corps, or the no-fly list, or NSA spying lists. And by the way, FOIA would not apply to this, so, you wouldn't know anything about the process because it's so important for us to mitigate these things. After the federal government has detained you without due process to mitigate the immediate threat you pose, what kind of punishments await you in court? A $1 million fine, 20 years in prison, and forfeiture of everything you own. Yes, that is the maximized punishment of this if you are deemed a national security threat. Again, this is a non-oversight system would be absolutely draconian. And they can do it to literally anyone they want, especially in the era of deepfakes. They can always deepfake you if you've got enough material on the internet. If you are too much of a problem, they can make you say or do whatever they want. And as long as they can plausibly pass that through some oversight committee of old people that don't even understand what a deepfake is, they can get a warrant for you. The act also grants unlimited hiring power to positions of enforcement, unlimited funds with little to no review, and immunity to FOIA. I would think conservatives would have a problem with yet another bureaucratic extension that doesn't even have a set budget, but they're not really conservatives. As we see, they're cucking on guns at the moment too. And then on and on and on through. There's a shit ton of material there. You should check out the thread. So yeah, the Internet Patriot Act, calling it the Restrict Act. Oh, it's just for the children. Think of the kids. Well, yeah, I do. I think of the security of our children. That's why I'm against gun control. It's also why I'm against censorship, because they always seem a prelude to genocide or something like that. Never used for benevolent reasons in the history of mankind. Now, the Restrict Act. More like the Small Dick Act. So it should not pass. Unfortunately, as we've seen with Congress, generally speaking, they have a really broad bipartisan agreement on such things. They like to extend their own power, even if it's being outsourced to other groups, to other bureaucratic fronts and shit like that. So you criticized law enforcement? Well, they think you're a national security threat. Here's your $500,000 fine. You literally broke no law, but somehow we're going to be granted the capability to prosecute you. Now, that's being slightly glib and hyperbolic. That's not especially what it is. What it is the creation of a new bureaucratic system with little oversight, which means it will be abused, with little budgetary oversight, which means it will be way over budget, that it operates in the shadows free of FOIA and even congressional consent, despite Congress being involved in creating the system itself. Every time that happens, you end up with scandals and problems. This bill makes no sense. This proposition doesn't do anything to TikTok anyway as a foreign company. What are you going to do? You're going to take the CEO of TikTok sitting over there in Shanghai or something and you're going to jail him? You're going to whine to Interpol? No. This is an attempt to go after American citizens. This is an attempt to go after people that are domestic because they're actually under the laws of the United States. It's not about national security. It's about control. It's not about saving the children. It's about censoring you, censoring me, knocking us out of the way, and allowing corporations to run roughshod over the First Amendment. Because these people are all tied at the hips. This is the most deep state things I've seen since the Patriot Act. As a millennial, that rather bothers me. That's about all. Peace out.